In this video, we're going to talk about hazards of the sales department, common safety hazards associated with working in sales, and how to stay safe. These definitely aren't the only ways you could hurt yourself in the sales department, but they are some of the most common or could lead to the most long-term debilitating accidents. And they are slips and falls related to ice and snow, slips and falls not related to ice and snow, vehicle accidents, and workplace violence, and I'll expand upon each one of these in detail. Slips and falls from ice and snow are some of the most frequent and serious accidents that we receive as your workers' compensation carrier. The number one thing you can do is avoid complacency. Yeah, it can happen to you, and it is likely, but there are common sense steps that you can take to minimize the chances of it happening to you while you're at work. The number one thing we always recommend is footwear. No leather-soled shoes whenever there is ice and snow in the forecast. Consider a shoe or a boot with some good traction that you can get around in. Also consider a slip-on cleat to walk in the ice and snow in. However, make sure you take those off before you walk on tile floors because that creates a whole different hazard and we want to avoid that. Use caution when exiting vehicles. Hold on to the door for support. Take advantage of all handrails that are at your disposal on the lot and on sidewalks. Do not keep your hands in your pockets. If you fall down with your hands in your pockets, there's a good chance you're going to take a face plant straight into the pavement. Only walk on designated walkways. Look ahead for hazards and avoid them by using common sense. So we're going to avoid the ice patches and snow patches that are in our walkway. Watch for downspouts and known trouble spots on the property and avoid those as well. Most dealerships know where those places are. If you're new at your dealership, you might want to ask your supervisor if there's anywhere in particular you should watch out for when you're walking in ice and snow. Make sure you dry your boots or shoes on the floor mat whenever you enter the building. And if you find an area that needs to be addressed, like a spot that needs salting or a wet floor inside the building somewhere, talk to your supervisor, or if you have the authority to go ahead and clean that up, go ahead and just get it done. It only takes a minute. Just after slips and falls from ice and snow are slips and falls not related to ice and snow. It sounds silly to have two different categories, but they both account for a significant portion of the work comp claims of the sales department. So it's better for us as far as crunching data and getting a better understanding of where these losses are coming from if we break them into those two categories. And they are very similar as far as the frequency and severity. So just like with walking on ice and snow, make sure you're using designated walkways and parking lot surfaces as much as possible. Use caution during wet weather, clean up spills immediately. Stay in the moment, and that's paying attention to the hazards at hand. Most slips and falls are due to inattention to current conditions. And stay out of fixed operations unless you have business there. If you do have business there and you have permission to be in there, use caution. That's not where you're generally at. And they have a whole different range of hazards that you'll be exposed to in that short time that you're there. As I'm sure most of you could have guessed, vehicle accidents are still a leading cause of accident for the sales department. So anytime you're in a vehicle and the wheels are turning, wear your seat belts. There are no exceptions to that rule. Same thing with phones. You should definitely never be on the phone, especially not texting and driving, but even phone calls. We like hands-free. If that's possible to be rigged up to that. If not, the phone call can wait. Pay attention to the road and other drivers. Use defensive driving techniques. So stay in the moment, stay vigilant. And if you have any questions about that, you can check out our joint webinar that we did with Federated Insurance on distracted driving. That's on our YouTube channel as well. I hate that I have to even talk about workplace violence as being an exposure for the sales department, but the reality is that it is a possibility. If you've never heard of anything like this, go ahead and do a quick Google search of workplace violence events that have happened in dealerships, and you'll see that they'll range anywhere from disgruntled customers, disgruntled employees, robberies, or just being in the line of fire. At the end of the day, you guys are a retail store in the front with service in the back, so the doors are open. Anybody can get in from any side, so you guys do need to be vigilant. Number one, don't think it can't happen to you, because it absolutely can. Take threats and sounds seriously. Nobody wants to believe that something bad is happening or that the man is shooting at us. That's called normalcy bias, and that's something that we need to fight. We need to report any suspicious activity, threats, or abnormal behavior immediately to your supervisor. And if there is actually something going on, a workplace violence event or an active shooter, remember the mantra: get out, hide out, or take out, not necessarily in that order, but those are your options to survive. We recommend the LA County Sheriff's Department on our recommended videos playlist on YouTube. That gives a really great video and breakdown of how to apply those in a real life situation. In summary, your chances of selling a car are decreased whenever you're in the hospital. The hazards of the sales department are general common sense and nature related. Prevention comes down to staying vigilant and battling complacency, understanding that they can happen to you and taking the steps necessary to avoid those events. Now go forth and be safe.